Shalom guys! I hope your day is good, but better watch this video. I'm Genoveva Borje from BSEd English 2B. So, our discussion for today is knowledge dimensions, and I will give an example for you to know. So, my chosen topic, which is speech delivery. So, I have a table here consisting of the knowledge dimension, which is factual, conceptual, procedure, and metacognition. All the cognitive dimensions are remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. And I construct learning outcomes under the respective dimensions. So let's start. So I have here the table. I will discuss it to you. Okay. So under the cognitive dimension, which is remember, which is cognitive dimension, which you remember terminologies, remember the definition, and so on. Factual, list the type of speech delivery. Conceptual, describe what is speech. Procedural, state the steps in constructing a speech. Metacognition, review tasks accomplished in performing the speech. So in factual, it is obvious that list, which is enumerate. When you enumerate, you will use what? Remembering. You will remember what are the types of speech or what are the type of speech delivery. In conceptual, you give concept. So here, we describe, we give definition. For example, describe what is speech. Next is procedural. Here you use procedure or steps. Here in remembering, you should remember the step and able to state it. That's why it is state the steps in constructing a speech. And able to construct the speech, you need to state what are the steps. So here you use remembering. Next is metacognition. Metacognition is your strategy on how to improve your remembering skills with that concept, remembering skills in speech delivery. Metacognition is about assessing or thinking of a strategy on how you will improve a thing using remembering. So here I construct a learning outcome, which is review task accomplished in performing the speech. So here you will review. Unsa ka itong mga gipangbuhat na mo ha pag-perform sa speech? Nag-improve to me. We do impromptu. Impromptu is it is not it is on the spot, just like now I am discussing to you. I don't have any notes, any scripts. I just explain it. I just give it on the spot. Okay, next is understand. Cognitive dimension, understand. Under the factual, which is summarize the content of a speech. Under the conceptual, classify speech according to purpose. Procedural, describe the procedure in performing a speech. And metacognition, choose the best strategy on how to interpret the idea of the speech. So here, you use your understanding, your comprehension, not just by remembering something, but understanding something. So here in factual, we use facts. We summarize. So here we understand the content of the speech, enable to summarize. Next is the conceptual, which is to classify. Here we classify according to the purpose of the speech. For example, the purposes of the speech is to persuade people, to inspire people. So here you will classify of what you will classify the speech purpose. So I will give a speech and then you will classify its purpose and you will put it on their respective purpose. So that is classification, which is categorizing. Next is procedural. Describe the procedure in performing a speech. Here you will describe, you will understand the procedure enabled to, for example, you have there the procedure. So enable to describe that procedure, you need to use your comprehension or understanding. So in procedural, we describe, okay, in the cognitive dimension of understanding. Next is metacognition. Choose the best strategy on how to interpret the idea of the speech. Choose the strategy. So as what I have said, metacognition is about the strategy on how to improve your learning, on how you will learn effectively, okay? So here you will think, you will understand, you will choose a strategy on how to interpret an idea. Interpret, which is you in interpreting, you should use your comprehension, which is understanding. You will use your mind on how to interpret the idea or on what's the idea of the speech, right? Next is cognitive dimension, which is the apply. Under the factual, use facts in constructing an informative speech. Conceptual, use correct pronunciation in delivering a speech. Procedural, follow the steps in performing a speech. Metacognition, use the best strategy in delivering a speech. So, when we say apply, which means we apply our knowledge. So from the remembering, understanding, now we remember. Then next we understand. After we understand something, we need to apply it to ourselves. We need to acquire. Like for example, in factual, use facts in constructing an informative speech. So here, the verb use, which is under apply. Factual, which is the terminologies, which is about facts. So use facts in constructing, because when we use facts, it is an informative speech, because an informative speech purpose is to inform people. Enable to inform people, it needs to be reliable, it needs to be fact and true. Next is conceptual. Use correct pronunciation in delivering a speech. So here in conceptual, we deliver concept. We use it to our concept by using it in our correct pronunciation by delivering a speech. Next is procedural. Follow the steps in performing a speech. Here we apply, we follow. So here we follow the steps, which is the procedure, which is the steps. Next is metacognition. Use the best strategy in delivering a speech. So in metacognition, it is what I have said earlier is about the strategy on how to learn something effectively. So, enable to deliver the speech effectively, successfully, we need to think of a strategy, enable to apply it to ourselves. We need to apply it. We need to acquire it to ourselves. Even though you know it, you remember it, you understand it, it it doesn't make sense if you don't apply it to yourself. Okay, next is analyze cognitive dimension. Under factual, which is identify types of speech according to delivery. Under conceptual, distinguish the content of the speech. Procedural, examine the tips on how to deliver the speech successfully. Metacognition reflects on one's ability to deliver a speech. Here in factual, identify types of speech according to delivery, which is you analyze and able to identify something, and able to have a terminology, a factual, which is, for example, I will give my student the definition, then definition of what is impromptu speech. So an impromptu is a speech that is on the spot and it has no preparation, just like that, for example. And the student will analyze, oh, what kind of speech is that? So that's what we call identify, because the student will identify of what is the answer. So they use analyze. They analyze, what is it? Next is conceptual. Distinguish the content of the step of the speech. Here, which is the classification, the categories, they distinguish, which is they analyze and able to distinguish the content, which is what's the speech is all about, what's the content of the speech, what is the purpose of the speech, what is the goal of the speech, right? Next is procedural. Examine the tips on how to deliver the speech successfully. Here in procedural, we need to examine, we need to analyze the procedures, the tips. For example, your teacher gave you a tips or the procedures. Here, as you look the procedures, you need to analyze on how to apply it to your speech delivery, enable to have a successful speech. Next is metacognition. Reflects on one's ability to deliver a speech. So you will reflect on one's ability. Oh, she or he is good at that speech delivery. Oh, I will apply that to myself. You will analyze and reflect that. Oh, you will assess yourself on um, where you are good at, or where are the things that needs to be improved, enable to you to know what are the things that you need to improve, what are the things that you are good at, which is that strategy. Next is evaluate. Cognitive dimension, which is evaluate. Under factual, which is justify of what content you stand. Conceptual, critique the concept of a speech. Procedural, check the procedure in delivering a speech. Metacognition, assess yourself on how to deliver a speech appropriately. Excuse me. Here under factual, justify of what content you stand. Here you justify, you are not kana bitang pasikot-sikot. You are stable with your stand, with your purpose. You are gipanindigan jud nimo kung unsa imong gi-aim. You are fighting for the speech that you aim, you are persuading, and you stand, you justify. That is under factual. Next is conceptual. Critique the concept of a speech. Here, you critique, you evaluate the speech on for example, you have already made a speech and then you critique it on what are the things that needs to improve, what are the things that um, it's already correct and acceptable. And also here in critiquing the concept of the speech, you can critique, for example, you are a judge on a speech delivery contest. Here you apply evaluation because you judge something, you judge the delivery of the speech. Next is procedural. Check the procedure in delivering a speech. Here, for example, your teacher already gave the procedure on how to deliver a speech. But here, you will check, you will evaluate, you will judge if it is the procedures that were listed below are correct or wrong. Or kaya you make this procedure if it is accurate, if it is appropriate for you, if it is the procedure are effective and able to deliver a speech. Next is metacognition. Assess yourself on how to deliver a speech appropriately. Here, you will think on what are the things that I need to improve? What are the things that I am good at? What are the things that I will do in able to improve my speaking skills, my pronunciation, my speech delivery, the clarity, the conciseness? You will judge yourself. You will think of yourself or you will rate yourself if it is needs to be improved or not, or you are best. Next is which is the last. Last is cognitive dimension create. Under factual, which is produce clear and coherent sentences in constructing a speech. Next is conceptual, create a speech using the tips in constructing a speech appropriately. Procedural, construct a speech using the correct procedure. Metacognition, improve your pronunciation in delivering a speech. So here you create, you formulate, because first you remember the concept, everything, which is the procedure, you remember. Next, when you remember, you understand. After you understand, you analyze. It is goes higher, higher, and then higher. After you analyze, and then apply, and then evaluate and create. Next is factual, produce clear and coherent sentences in constructing a speech. Here, you will construct a speech, which is you will create your speech. In creating your speech, you need to produce sentences. You need to create sentences that is clear, which is the clarity, the conciseness, and coherent, which means the appropriateness of the sentence. For the audience, you will think of words that is appropriate for them to hear. Next is conceptual. Create a speech using the tips in constructing a speech appropriately. So here, still, you will create a speech. And then, by creating the speech, you will use the tips that you've learned, that you've previously understand during the discussion, from the first discussion of your teacher until the end. That's why in tests there is always For the beginning of the test, there is remembering, and the last, which is commonly an essay or um, constructing a sentence. So next is procedural. Construct a speech using the correct procedure. So here still you will construct a speech, but using the procedures that you've already learned, you've already checked, which is you've already evaluate, which is the procedures that you've done, that you've formulate. Next is metacognition. Improve your pronunciation in delivering a speech. So here we will think of a strategy on how you will improve your pronunciation in delivering a speech. It's either you will watch videos, tutorial about pronunciation, or you will watch English movies. It's up to you, because in metacognition, it is about assessing yourself on how to improve yourself, on how to learn, effectively, on how to study effectively. Because even though you study, but if you study, it is not the way it is effective for you. So it needs to have the strategy. So that's all. I think that's all. Thank you. That's all, which is the last, the create. And see you in my next video. By the way, I'm Genoveva Borje, BSEd English 2B. Thank you.